What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the podcast. Welcome in to another episode of the Triple Play Fantasy Baseball Show. Now a proud member of Fantasy Points and the Fantasy Points Media Group. D. Mendy here, joined by a piece of dessert that when it comes to putting eggplant emojis, he takes the cake and he eats it too. That's Art Tornabeni, a.k.a. Little Cheesecake, the LC. LC, how's it going?
It's going well. I like to show when I'm excited about our draft picks, and that's how I show excitement in the group chat. Eggplant emojis.
It became next to your name every single time, and now it's in my contacts like that. But nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with being a little excited. We need that here. But I'll tell you what.
It's a draft.
Of course. I'll also tell you we're joined tonight by the king of the first bucket bet in basketball. It's Eric Mendelson, a.k.a. The Doc. What's going on?
I feel like everything that you say and just me being a degenerate gambler. But yes, Cole Anthony, first bucket happened the other day.
And you didn't win any money from it.
Yeah, the bet didn't go through, which sucks, but whatever. It's the adrenaline rush that I'm looking for.
Yeah, I feel that. We're also joined by the last member of the crew, the man who doubles as a fantasy baseball analyst and extra in Peaky Blinders. It's Marty Tallman. What's up?
Hey, the blinders, the peaks. I'm great, man. Look at our guest. That's the only thing that matters. Just get off of me. Go talk to him.
Oh, you know what? That's as good a transition as I've ever heard. So without further ado, we welcome in a man whose initials DVR stand for Dat Voice Rad, a podcast host, producer, and writer at The Athletic. You may know this man for his love of Victor Robles, or maybe you sent him a question to read with something Brewers related in the title. The smooth operator whose favorite word in the dictionary has become Gordle. We welcome in the host with the most, Derek Van Riper. How's it going, man?
Those are the best intros that I get anywhere. I mean, I will come back forever because the intros are always so kind. So I appreciate that.
Hey, of course, man. We really appreciate your time and big fans of all that you do over at the Athletic. And obviously, you're one of the Mount Rushmore guys in the fantasy baseball industry. I got to ask you, now that everything's picking up, is it kind of the juices are flowing again and excited for, I know baseball's kind of bleak right now, but the possibility that things could start soon?
Yeah, just the time of year. I mean, I think knowing that labor and tout wars and NFBC drafts are actually on the calendar, even if they're not in person, we're still planning on having them. That always gets me going. It kind of pushes that process along. I think December and January are months that normally I'm digging into things and making my own spreadsheets, but February is when it starts to feel like a season is actually happening, even if we know it's probably going to be a delayed start.
Yeah, and I think right now we kind of have half the community that's kind of like very pessimistic. It's like, hey, even if it takes till 2 weeks prior, we could still have season on time. Maybe just spring training's delayed. It's too long anyway. And then the other half are like, hey, things are getting pushed back. There's no way season starting on time. It's pretty crazy right now, to say the least. But you know what? That's why we have position previews. And what better way to transition than to talk about what we have on the docket tonight, which is our first baseman preview, as the triple play position previews are here and they're spectacular. We started off last week with catchers. Now we're at the first base position, and we're going to talk about players we like, players we fade, some late round gems, and more. You can expect some disagreements, debates, and tons of great information for when you draft your fantasy baseball team. After, we'll go to our question for the question of the week. Would you move the All-Star game from its current date? If so, to when and why? And after we have our game of the week come in and shut the door. So if you guys are ready to get another episode started, then man, we're here to do it for you. And let's dive in just real quick before we get into the first base preview. Just kind of wanted to hear your thoughts. And I'm going to be pretty honest. I don't really care as much about these guys, Derek. So mostly your thoughts. I would like to hear your thoughts on kind of how the negotiations are going. Are you more on the pessimistic side that no way season's on time? Or have you seen things and you're like, okay, some optimism that maybe we just missed some spring training and that things could start where we expect it to?
I'm probably near the middle of the two ends where I'm not necessarily expecting the season to start on time, but I also don't think we're going to lose 40 games or anything like that either. I think what we're seeing is a lot of public posturing. I think bringing in the government to mediate is not really a solution. It's just sort of a delay tactic. It's a way of trying to make things look a certain way, which is what the owners have done for a long time. But I think the thing that could make this take longer than some people expect is that I think the appetite in the public is probably more in the favor of labor now than it ever has been. If you just look around at what's happening in other industries, I think you'd find that people are going to be more compassionate toward the players than they might have been 10 or 15 years ago because they're thinking about their own situations, right? So I think that that could kind of change their willingness to wait it out a little bit. Obviously, what they're seeking and where the owners are at, there's a massive gulf right now. So I don't know if it's a midpoint solution or if it's still probably closer to what the owners want. I would probably have to bet on the latter if I had to guess. But look, I think we're going to get at least 140 games this season, even if the next 4 weeks or so are just miserable from a news perspective.
Marty, do you echo what Derek's saying? Are you kind of on the same page with that as well?
Yeah, I mean, they've met 5 times over the last 11 days. And if they actually cared about getting this done on time, they would have started months ago. So, we're at the mercy of of Major League Baseball and what they're going to do with the labor negotiations. So I'm probably, 140 games. I mean, that's so sad to even think that, but it's probably true.
Cheesecake?
I just wanted to echo, I saw a tweet recently that a labor attorney put out. We don't actually have to miss any time. The only reason we're going to miss any games is because there's a lockout. They can still negotiate while spring training is going on. Even if they want to just end the lockout, the negotiations don't have to end. So I thought that was an interesting point. Like there really actually is no need to have a lockout at all as far as negotiations.
Fair enough. And Doc, it's all the same as you as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to actually see progress when there's jeopardizing games. Like right now, it's cold. I think spring training, your casual fan isn't getting into. I think once the weather starts to warm up a little bit, there's going to be a little bit, and especially when football is over too, I think that's when it's going to be a little bit more impeding. And what we've seen from a couple of years ago is they can get a deal done quickly if they choose to. I think the positive looking at it is we know the points that they're looking at and the negotiations, and it's just going to be a point of compromising.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens as things continue to play out. Just a reminder real quick, if you have not signed up for the Triple Players Ball, which is a DC 50, we've actually almost filled out our third league. We've got 2 spots left, and it's quite a good time if I do say so myself, as you can see from the graphic. We've got right now, hopefully, going to be 45, potentially 60 contestants competing for one prize. I should have gotten a picture of your golden cleats art for the first place trophy.
Next week.
Yes, it's 1929 golden cleats. Is that what the prize is? You would learn to unmute your mic. Look at the rookie behavior from Cheesecake.
Yeah, they're from 1929, direct from the golden age of the Yankees and the Philadelphia A's.
All right, well, there you go. That's our first place prize, along with, of course, the winnings. So if you would like to join the Triple Players Ball, you can send a message over to the account at Triple Play Fantasy, myself at DMendio2, or our email at tripleplayfantasy@gmail.com. All right, let's get started here with our first base preview. And we're going to start off, as we do with each episode, explaining the fact that we are doing NFBC ADP strictly. So obviously, this is not necessarily how it is on every site, but we are looking for the past month. So we are looking from January 6th to today, which is February 3rd. And as we get more drafts, we'll probably go more 2-week style. But for right now, this is how we're going to do it. And DVR, I want to start you off first. We're looking at the 1 through 15 range here for first baseman. And someone in this range that you really like, that you find yourself drafting a ton of, is who?
Pete Alonso is the guy that I really want among first basemen. I think this position as a whole, it gets tricky if you wait too long, even if you're trying to fill a corner with a first baseman. A lot of times you can end up with somebody who's on a big side platoon, or they've got a terrible batting average situation because they hit a ton of fly balls, they pull everything. Pete Alonso, I think, for the amount of power he brings, has a better batting average floor than people realize. And he's coming off a season in which he just lowered his K rate under 20%.
Mm-hmm.
So you have the guy that leads the major leagues in homers over the last 3 seasons combined, getting better at making contact in a lineup that is also improving. The additions they're making there are significant. I think a full season of a productive Francisco Lindor with Starling Marte there, with Mark Canha. This is a much deeper offense the way it has been throughout Alonso's entire time there. So no one has any doubts at all about the power. I think he's more likely to hit 260 than 230. I love everything he brings to the table. He's a max volume player in a good situation now. So I am all in on Pete Alonso at his current price. And I can't believe he's not going inside the top 40 just based on the track record that he has as a power run producer.
I was going to say, I find it hard to think Matt Olson going around pick 43 to anybody wanting to take that 12 pick discount. I mean, what's Matt Olson going to give you that Pete Alonso is not going to give you? That to me is very mind boggling. And I can see why where he's slotted, why that's kind of your best value there at first baseman for the production he's going to give. And like you said, that strikeout rate, it being under 20%, which is incredible. It's insane for somebody that hits that many bombs, for someone to be able to have a strikeout percentage that low. Do you think he can replicate that this season?
I don't have any strong reason to believe he can't. I mean, even if he gives back 2 to 3 percentage points, that's fine. I'll take a guy with 50 home run potential that strikes out 23% of the time, because I just think he's putting enough balls in play where he's going to max out on that RBI potential as well. Sometimes we get a little bit lazy with the runs and the RBIs as categories. We focus so much on homers and steals, but I think Alonso is probably plus in runs, RBIs, and home runs, plus in home runs. He's not going to hurt you in batting average. And even for a first baseman, I get you a handful of steals, which you're not really getting steals from that position anyway. So I love him. I think the Olson thing they're totally even to me in terms of what they could do, but Alonso's situation is already better. You're not wish casting that trade to Yankee Stadium or whatever it is you're hoping is going to happen with Matt Olson. You don't need that to happen with Alonso. The setup is already there.
Yeah, and just kind of looking at Alonso a little bit, it seems like he kind of just became more aggressive last year. His zone swing went up to a career high. The zone contact was a career high. And even his chase was a little bit higher than 2020. But again, he's actually swinging in the zone more, which maybe you would think means maybe he has a little bit of a better batter's eye. The, just overall, the whiff percentage being down, swing percentage being up. Maybe he's seeing the ball a lot better. He's identifying pitches in the zone and he's making them pay. So I like it. Pete Alonso, I think, is a great call to start out this discussion. Cheesecake, you like somebody that we were kind of just, actually, you know what, Doc, you kind of like somebody that we were trashing just now at his price at Matt Olson. How come you like him as the third off the board?
Yeah, well, I certainly liked his value last year a lot better. We're talking about a guy that just came off a season where he had the most home runs off a left-handed pitcher being a left-handed batter. And one of the things I really love about Matt Olson is the durability. Played 156 games last year, 60 the game before, so a complete one. Year before, played 127, but had a hamate bone fracture in his hand, which is kind of a fluke injury, not a soft tissue one. And the year before that, 162. He cut his K rate down from 31.4% to around 16%. And sometimes it's just the eye test. When he makes contact with the ball, he hits it hard. So we talked about Pete Alonso cutting down his strikeout rate. Matt Olson's was even more significant. Now, I do love Alonso at his draft price, but what we've seen with him the last couple seasons is he started off really slow. In March, April of this past year, 247. In May, hit 233. And in June, really spiked up to 293, but then back down to 250. I just think Matt Olson provides a little bit more consistency. And if he gets traded, then he's going to be in a better lineup.
Yeah, that's a good point. If you were to necessarily go to the Yankees with that short porch and left, that could definitely be something that would work to his advantage.
And for the record, I do think A's are sellers at some point this season.
Yeah, I agree. Marty, you went a little deeper, and you went down to the Cron man, CJ Cron.
CJ.
Yep. And him in the back in Colorado this year. So at the 11th first baseman, you must really like that value.
I do. And for me, Cron's, he's my number 8th ranked first baseman. So I already like the kind of a discount that I see for him. In 2021, he hit 28 home runs. He slashed 281, 375, 530 with a 383 xWOBA, which is in the 86th percentile. He had a career high fly ball percentage at 32.5. So he's completely sold out for the long ball. And talking about decreasing your K rate, he decreased his as well. So it was a 30.8 in 2020, and he got it all the way down to 21.4 for CJ. It's pretty unbelievable, actually. So he's not super sexy, but where you're getting him, he's going to hit around 30 home runs. There's the BABIP always looks great in core, so he's going to hit around 260, 270. the counting stats are going to be there, and he should be, 150 game player if he can stay healthy.
Yeah, and if you look just basically anything that's not chasing the ball, it's a lot of red there. So if you're a bull, I would not recommend you go to his StatCast page.
Hey Marty, just for the record, he's never played 150 games in a season.
I know. That's why I said if he stays healthy.
Just
Did you listen to the last part, Doc?
Just raining on your parade. That's what I do here.
You cannot rain on my parade because he is at 125, and right there, that's a beautiful.
All right. Well, I think I get a sense of a debate coming later. Cheesecake, wrap this up for us. Your is actually falls technically outside the rules, so you didn't do your homework assignment. He was the 16th first baseman off the board.
You can't count Tyler Stevenson as a first baseman. Who's going to play him at first base?
Art, when I look at this, it says 15th Tyler Stevenson, catcher, first base.
You can't count him as a first baseman. That he's being drafted there to catch. So that in that rule, Votto falls within the top 15. I think that's solid. I think I might actually get some agreement on this. Vote in the comments. But Votto is in the top 15. and I think with Votto, what I see is just a lot more safety than the guys going ahead of him, because he's going behind guys like Josh Bell, Ty France, Rhys Hoskins. I think Votto he's a Hall of Fame player who made the adjustment and made a change to his swing, and he's having a little bit more power. He still hit 266 last season. He still drove in 99 runs and scored 73. I think that he's a lot safer pick, and he's going later right now than guys like Hoskins, who might return a much lower batting average. France, who doesn't have nearly as much power. Bell, there are some issues with his season last year. He did not really, he doesn't have a high barrel rate, and he does have long cold spells. So I think when you look at Votto, I have him up a lot higher, around the ninth or 10th first baseman, and he's going as the 16th right now. So I think he's a great value.
DVR, I'm curious, right? Last year, Joey Votto was almost free. Now he's going inside the top 150. Are you still interested in drafting him inside the top 150, or do you think kind of last year might have been a mirage and maybe he regresses some?
I lean pretty heavily on the BAT-X projections, and that system believes that the power mostly holds, probably closer to the high 20s range than the mid to upper 30s. I mean, the park still helps him a lot. I'm in. I think he's on the shorter list of kind of pick 150 range to 200 range options at first base that I really like as a corner, because I'm not worried about him sharing that role with anybody. Now that Tucker Barnhart's gone, Tyler Stevenson won't move over and play first base at all. And if we have universal DH, even better, because they do have a little bit of a glut of power hitting guys they're trying to jam into that infield mix. But I don't see a lot of playing time downside for Votto, which makes him one of the last sort of safe options in this range.
Yeah, no, I mean, looking at, again, the board right here, you got Tyler Stevenson, who's a catcher, Max Muncy, who might need Tommy John surgery. And then you have, Rhys Hoskins, can he bounce back? Alex Kirilloff, who looked good in his short time that he was healthy. And then, it's a lot of question marks here. So Joey Votto could be a nice steady presence going inside the top 150, especially if you decide to wait on first baseman. Don't panic. Everybody always, Jose Abreu, I think, is always the calling card. Like, hey, if you wait till after Jose Abreu, it goes down. That's he's like the mark. But I think there are some good first basemen you can get late if you decide to sleep on the position for a little bit. But we got to get negative really for a second here. And we don't necessarily hate these players, right? We just don't like their draft price. We're not taking these players where they're currently slated to be going. And DVR, who's that player where you don't find yourself drafting too much of them?
Ty France is that guy. I mean, I think playing time wise, he's probably safe for 2022, but as that team keeps getting better, he's exactly the type of player who begins to fall in the batting order, and then he just plays less because they end up with somebody who's just a better all-around bat. I think for a guy that plays first base, you'd expect more raw power. The barrel rate really isn't that impressive. We did see significant improvements in the K rate during his first run as an everyday guy last year, which is awesome to see a sub 20% K rate from him. Doesn't walk a ton, but he walks enough. And I think the thing that I'm struggling with the most with Ty France is that the 291 batting average we saw last year seems unsustainable based on the type of contact that he makes. So for me, it almost just takes an adjustment for him to be as good as he was last year in batting average. And even then, you might not get more power. And if he makes the adjustment to get more power, he might lose that batting average that he had last year anyway. So I just see a lot of ways where it can break down on him from just an underlying skills standpoint, and eventually, maybe more in the future beyond this season, from a playing time perspective as well. I just think the other guys in that range, I mean, if you're looking at Ty France versus Rhys Hoskins as a toss-up, I'll take the health risk on Hoskins, take the batting average hit, and try and get a cheap 35 home runs with good run production in that spot instead. I think I'd rather have Votto straight up too, and he's available 10 picks later pretty consistently.
Yeah, and I'm curious, do you think with the Mariners most likely expected to contend right from the gates that if he's not producing, I kind of outperformed a lot of his metrics last year. Do you think if he's not producing, that with the talent that they have, that they would be comfortable just sitting him and it's not like he's going to stay in the lineup per se every single day?
I mean, he's a pre-arbitration player, so I just think there's so little invested in him from an organizational standpoint that, yeah, if he's in a prolonged slump, he becomes a part-time guy really fast. They've got a little bit of extra catching depth. I think Luis Torrens is one of those guys that could end up playing a little bit of first base. They already signed Evan White to that extension a few years ago, so if he turns a corner, I think they've got more reasons to try and play him than to play France. And I think there's other unusual situations that could play out too. I mean, if they end up adding a free agent, maybe Abraham Toro moves over and plays some more first base because he can play all over the place. So I see like 7 or 8 little reasons not to like Ty France, which if any, like 1 or 2 of those were the only concern, I don't think I'd be that worried about him. But just seeing all the ways it can go wrong, he's become a player that I just steer away from in this range.
Yeah, 291 batting average last year, 269 expected batting average, according to Fangraphs. So definitely could have outperformed his numbers there, and it could be something interesting to watch for next year. I'm with you, DVR. Let's go to you, Marty. Let's talk about who you're fading in this range.
Yeah, and this is going to be, like you said, for me, it's going to be Jared Walsh. And it's not because I don't like him. It's just where he's currently priced. So he's the 9th first baseman off the board. And anytime he bats 170 against lefties. So I don't see him, especially if the Angels are serious about contending. I don't see them rolling him out there every single time. So we're already talking about a potential platoon situation. And just he's striking out 26% of the time as well. And he doesn't walk enough for me. And going back to looking at ADP, go back to CJ Cron. So he's actually projected, and I'm looking at the Bad X. Shout out to DVR because I agree. I love the Bad X and Darren Carty. He dropped it today, I think. So great for that. But yeah, he's projected to hit 2 more home runs. Cron's expected to hit 2 more home runs than Walsh, have more counting stats and a better batting average. And you can wait on him.
Yeah. And that his batting average versus lefties is a good little stat there too. And he's somebody that, again, last year was a lot cheaper. And now you have to draft him inside the top 10 first baseman right after pick 100. So it's a lot more draft capital you have to pay for that. Cheesecake, I'm curious because your dislike might be more out there than what most people would say on a show. And I'm going to let you defend yourself. You have Freddie Freeman as your dislike.
I think there's a lot of things that go into this. One is the fact that I'm not 100% sure where he's going to play. If I know he's going back to Atlanta, I may feel a little bit more solid. That's just a point of caution, but mostly it has to do with the fact that I think that waiting and taking someone who has some speed at that point that he's being drafted is a better option, because players like Matt Olson and Pete Alonso are providing so much value later on in the draft. Specifically, I think Olson, because if you look, last season, Freeman had 120 runs and 83 RBIs, 203 runs plus RBIs. Olson produced 212 of those. I don't think Freeman's batting average positive actually offsets the power deficit that he's starting to show from guys like Alonso and Olson anymore as well. So for me, Freeman, just he's a consistent guy. You're going to get a good batting average with pop, but I think you're going to get more pop with Olson and Alonso, and the batting average is not going to be worth as much more because they both have pretty decent batting averages. So I think I just pass on him.
You know what? I can't disagree with you in the sense I did the CBS mock on the CBS Fantasy Baseball Today draft the other day, and he was ranked right. I had the last pick, and he was available at the turn. The pick in the turn. He ended up falling until almost the top part of the second round, and I think it's for the reason you said. is because you can get so many guys, especially in roto formats, that are going to give you those stolen bases in that range, and you can wait a little bit longer for a first baseman. So you could probably find him falling a little bit more in spots. And I don't have it in front of me, of course, but I would be very curious to see how his ADP has kind of gone from beginning of draft season back in October to when they tracked it to now, to see if his ADP's really gone up or gone down since then, and to see what will happen to it when he does sign, and to see where he kind of settles in his ADP. So I definitely can't disagree with you there. Doc, give us yours real quick, and then we can move on to our next range.
Yeah, so I disclaimer that I did not follow the instructions, and two of the guys that I dislike are in the 1 to 15. But I'll give the higher one first.
Oh my God, you had one job.
Yeah, well, you changed up the numbers of how we normally do it. But for me, it's Ryan Mountcastle. 179 games played in his career. So it's a relatively small sample size, but it's kind of a tale of two stories. So 2020, he had 5 home runs in 35 games and a 333 batting average. In 2021, 33 homers, but a 255 batting average. Now, he upped his launch angle from 10.8 degrees to 16.3. The barrel percentage went up as well, but so did the K rate. So which Ryan Mountcastle are you going to get in a full season? Well, if you're expecting the power one, left field's getting pushed back 26.5 feet, raised 7 feet 4 inches to 13 feet up. He hit 22 of those 33 homers at home, where Camden Yards, in my backyard, is a very hitter-friendly park. So if you're banking on him for a source of home run power, I think you're going to see that significantly go down. And just to pick 107 when it's a little bit unproven, I think that's just too rich for me.
Yeah, I'm interested. I want to hear Derek's thoughts on that as well, because Ryan Mountcastle, I think I hear more people say they fade him than they actually want him. Are you in that same camp as well? Or are you just finding yourself not drafting too much of him?
Yeah, I think if we didn't know that Camden Yards' dimensions were changing, if they weren't changing, I'd be comfortable with Mountcastle at his price. I think we need to see a downturn. The thread that Derek Carty had, I think it was on Wednesday, breaking it down from just the expected changes, it was significant. It's a handful of home runs. It's a lot of balls that might have been singles and doubles turning into outs. I'm worried about Mountcastle. I don't like the supporting cast either. I think he's a little bit of a flawed player. I think a guy that really brings zero defensive value has to clear a very high bar to remain a long-term, everyday bat. Not worried about the playing time going away, but he either needs to strike out less or walk more in the long run to stay on a trajectory of being an everyday guy that pops 30 home runs or 25 home runs for the next 3 to 4 seasons. So I've just never liked Mountcastle's profile in general. And now if Camden Yards is going to play closer to a neutral park, maybe slightly hitter friendly, as opposed to being a great spot for right-handed bats, it's terrible news for Mountcastle.
Yeah, I will also add that I don't know if he's number one, but his expected home runs last year, just under 29, were far lower than his actual home runs of 33. That 4 home run gap might be one of the higher totals as far as the expected home run to actual home run difference. So he did the same thing in his short 2022, where his actual were 5 and his expected were 2.3. So at some point, maybe that starts swinging in the other direction, and you don't want to be the one that suffers that. With the Orioles park changing, that could be the swing in the other direction we're talking about. So I think Mountcastle is a good call there. Let's go to the next range of guys, and let's talk about the 16 through 30 range. And this is where things get a little interesting. Now we've got some guys that aren't necessarily slam dunks, guys that if you really like, you can probably make sure you get because they're not going super high here. DVR, who's the first baseman in the 16 to 30 range that you are a huge fan of?
If I get caught waiting and waiting and waiting, I actually think Nate Lowe might have one more level. And I think part of the optimism for me comes from Donnie Ecker being the new hitting coach in Texas. You look at the work that the Giants did with a cast of veterans that a lot of us had written off. That is impressive. I think with Nate Lowe, we're talking about a guy that's always had a good control of the strike zone. He's flashed a lot more raw power than we saw a year ago in his minor league profile, even when he was kind of first breaking in with the Rays a couple of seasons ago. It comes back to whether or not they can get him to hit the ball in the air more consistently. And I think that's the kind of adjustment that I'm generally comfortable banking on, especially when the price, if we're talking about him as a fringy top 250 overall guy, if I'm wrong, it's an easy cut. It's an easy player to move on from. If I'm right, the payoff could be significant because he also steals a handful of bases. He was 8 for 8 as a base stealer. He's probably not going to tank you in batting average. And the supporting cast is light years better than it was a season ago. They're probably not even done yet. Simeon and Seager are the big additions. Maybe they can get something out of Cole Calhoun. Maybe some of the guys that have been holdovers there, Leody Taveras or Willie Calhoun, can also take a step forward. Josh Young could be an impact bat. Suddenly we're looking at this Rangers team, and they're at least probably a league average sort of offense, which also just changes the counting stat potential for a player like Lowe, who should be pretty sticky in that lineup every day.
DVR, I'm looking at this lineup right now. Willie Calhoun, Marcus Semien, Corey Seager, Adolis Garcia, and then Nathaniel Lowe hitting 5th with those guys in front of him. I mean, he could have tons and tons of RBIs potential hitting in the 5th spot in that Rangers lineup. And obviously, like you talked about, the potential he has to start, hitting some home runs and to be a big contributor in this lineup. I mean, I feel like his ceiling has to be as high as anybody going in this range. And so I can see why you're a big fan of him at that spot. And at pick 241, goodness gracious. He's somebody, I mean, obviously you wouldn't feel comfortable as your starter, but this is somebody maybe you'd feel comfortable as kind of a backup first baseman or, in a very, very deep league, maybe a corner infielder.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're talking about a guy with a career 10.2% barrel rate. So he makes enough hard contact where if they can just get him to launch the ball more consistently, the payoff could be massive.
I love it. Now, Cheesecake, you also are a big fan of Mr. Lowe here. And yes. I would love if there's anything else that you would like to add to that DVR already talked about.
I just wanted to add a little bit of color. DVR did bring up Lowe's speed. Lowe had 8 stolen bases last year. That is 3 standard deviations above the average for the top first baseman. And that is worth a lot when you start to compare first baseman to first baseman. Lowe's stolen bases make him the 14th most valuable first baseman for last season in my rankings. And now he's going as the 26th. He had 642 plate appearances. They're going to put him out there every day. And like DVR said, I do think he has another level. So I'm really positive on Lowe.
I think you guys sold me. He was somebody I kind of was intrigued at, but not somebody I was going out of my way to try to draft later on. And the more you guys talk about, the more you're definitely selling me on that. He seems like a great late first baseman target. Doc, I know you didn't do your homework, and you have to talk about somebody else.
No, Anthony Rizzo's in this range. And I mean, you're setting up a good debate. So ADP of 174. So this is a guy that has 20 plus home runs in his last 8 full seasons, obviously not in the shortened season. His batting average has been going down, but great on-base player, which sets him up for more runs. And we talk about the stolen base upside for first baseman. He had 6 last year. And he's actually one of the players that I think is going to benefit if we have a shortened season. The reason being that how many times have we seen him out of the lineup for back tightness? Well, a lot of times it happens when it's colder weather, and he's been a proponent that there needs to be less games played in the MLB season. So imagine if we have a shortened season that starts in April or May, there's probably a better chance he's going to be healthy for the long run. If there's a universal DH, it doesn't affect him going to the NL. And I was down on where his ADP was last year, but if I can get him at 174, that is such good value.
No, I agree. I mean, he's somebody I also like to see where he lands before I start drafting too much of him. He's somebody that's been he seems to me kind of similar to what Joey Votto was a year ago, a veteran first baseman that still has tools in his profile. He obviously does not have the change that Joey Votto did, where Joey Votto was openly talking about being willing to strike out more to sell out for power. But he's somebody that I think in the right situation, and maybe he gets healthier in the offseason. I know he wasn't necessarily fully healthy down the stretch, that he could be somebody that gives you that veteran bounce back that we saw from Votto, from Evan Longoria, other guys last year, to be somebody that'd be very intriguing there. Marty, who's your guy?
Well, David, I want to start this off by saying I respect you and I respect your rules. So I picked the 16th first baseman, Joey Votto, because he is the 16th ranked first baseman. I don't have much more. We've already touched on it enough. He had a renaissance last year. He's back, baby. He's making a bid for the Hall of Fame. He's selling out for power. I love his ballpark. I love Joey Votto in general. He's the man.
See, this is why you're an A+ student. You kept yours short and you listened to your your homework assignments. So that's why you're my favorite one that's on this show. That's
Yeah,
the
he
normal.
listened one time. How many times has he forgot to upload his players?
That's okay. It's all good. It's all forgiven now. Let's go to the other side of the coin. Let's talk about players we're not fans of at this draft range. And DVR, who are you finding yourself avoiding here?
He's a nice story from a year ago, but I just can't find a reason to target Frank Schwindel. Like I think playing time could become an issue very quickly. They could be among the teams that goes out and throws a short deal at a free agent first baseman. Maybe there's an Anthony Rizzo reunion on tap. That could be a possibility that had they not signed Marcus Stroman, I wouldn't have even thought it was possible. But since they are spending something, they should probably spend more than they have to this point. I think the main thing with Schwindel that I'm worried about, it's a similar profile to Ty France. I don't think the per game power output we saw from him last year is anywhere close to his true talent baseline. The projections seem to agree with that feeling. I'm glad the numbers validated my concerns, because I had this kind of simmering all winter before the projections came out. The Bat X has him projected to slug 419. ATC's got him at 442. Steamer's a little more optimistic at 476. I just don't see it. I think the playing time, even if it doesn't completely dry up, could be a situation where he also ends up hitting in the bottom third of the order at some point, depending on how this lineup is constructed. So nothing I see in the profile really jumps off the page to me. If you guys see something you like, I'd love to hear it.
There wasn't, I mean, I've glanced over him a few times. There was nothing in his profile that I was particularly a big fan of when I've looked. And I mean, he's somebody that got a lot of playing time last year, and I think he was able to maximize it. But in a full grind of a season where he's playing day in, day out for 140 plus games, then you can kind of see who these guys really are, and not just in a short spurt like it was at the end of the season. So, I mean, him going over guys we've talked about, with Nathaniel Lowe, I'd rather take a chance on Luke Voit here personally. I don't know how you guys feel, but the potential that he could give you if he's healthy, Miguel Sano, what he is. I don't think I'm taking Frank Schwindel over a couple of these guys. I agree with you, and I'd have to definitely look more into his profile, but I'm not a Frank Schwindel guy by any means. Doc, you can go ahead. Is there anything about CJ Cron? It's just the health thing, right?
Well, the health thing, and to dive in a little bit. So playing in Colorado, there's low air pressure there. And so what happens is when there's
Mr. Weatherman.
Yeah, when there's a decrease in air pressure, your tissues have room to expand, and it puts more pressure on your joints. Coming from a guy the year before, Marty remembers as a Tiger, torn left patellar tendon in his knee. Now, coming on 32 years old, you don't expect him to be as healthy. This is a guy that's never played more than 142 games in a season. His average is around 120 on there. The home run splits are a little bit concerning. 326 and 19 homers at home, 235 and 9 homers on the road. And with the Colorado lineup they have, yeah, he could hit 25 to 30 homers, which he's done 3 times in his career, but he hasn't had 100 RBIs in a season. A lot of those home runs are probably going to be solo blasts. So I understand the power upside. He could easily have a Luke Voit year where he leads the league in home runs, but his price is just a little too high for me this year.
I totally forgot. I'm sorry to ignore your CJ Cron hate, because I don't really care about it, if I'm being honest. Frank Schwindel, I forgot that he's been playing minor league baseball since 2013. He's not a young buck. I totally forgot about that. I think that kind of ties into why. I mean, this was his first time. No, I guess he played with the Royals in 2019 for a little bit. But this was his 29, or he's age 29. Does any of you guys think that Frank Schwindel could have a late career resurgence here at 29?
For me, he's more of a quad A guy with a good nickname. Frankie 2 hits, baby.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough there. Marty, who is the player that you dislike in your range? Because I'm going to let Cheesecake debate Doc in a second.
Cool. So 16 through 30, Spencer Torkelson, and I'm a Tigers fan, and I'm not drafting anybody at any spot right there who I've never seen play before, and we're not exactly sure if he's going to be called up right away to start. Luke Voigt's going after him. Jesus Aguilar, who's top 10 in RBIs last year, was after him. I understand that a lot of these are going to be DCs, at this point, and they're shooting for upside here at the corner infield position, but I'd go Voigt over Torkelson at this point.
Okay, fair enough. Now, Cheesecake, give me the Cliff Notes version of why you'd like to debate Doc and how you dislike Anthony Rizzo.
Well, it really pains me to say it because Rizzo is one of my favorite ball players, but his skills are just deteriorating. They're just declining slowly. His power isn't where it used to be, and it never was great power. Last season, he only had 22 home runs. He played 141 games. He didn't miss significant time, but he only had 22 home runs, only produced 135 runs plus RBIs. And the batting average isn't where it used to be. You'll see it now. He goes through prolonged cold slumps. Um, Generally to start the season, why you said he does like to start later, but they creep back up also throughout the season now. And his approach has always been to be, a really good hitter, like choking up with 2 strikes and things like that. And it makes it so he barely ever strikes out. But I do think that he would benefit from selling out for a little bit more power, producing a little bit more power out of his swing. Until I see that change, I am kind of thinking that we're just going to start to see a slow decline in his production year over year.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's close out this discussion. We'll go around the horn here. This is your gem. This is calling your shot. This is everybody going outside the top 30 first baseman that you think in these DC 50s that you'll look back and be like, I can't believe I drafted him, and look what he's doing for my roster. DVR, who's your gem?
I think this one might be borrowed or stolen outright from Jenny Butler, but Rowdy Tellez. I mean, this is a guy that barrels the ball at a double-digit rate. He doesn't strike out the way that most people with that approach and body type tend to strike out. They don't have a lot of competition for him for at least the big side platoon role. So I think the key here is, how deep is your league? Is it a DC? Is it a league where you can make the twice weekly moves like an NFBC league? That's going to be everything. But I think you could be looking at Tellez as sort of a newer version of Travis Shaw. You guys remember Travis Shaw's quick peak in Milwaukee on the other corner, kind of a 260, 270 type hitter when it's going right with 30 homers. Like that's within range, and they need that. They desperately need sources of consistent offensive production. We saw flashes of it during his time in Milwaukee last year. And at this price, there's so many guys that you see lower playing time expectations for. I mean, Satsugo, I think, could play a similar role in Pittsburgh because they have so many vacancies there. But a lot of other players here might be more like 400 plate appearance guys, whereas Rowdy could be a 550, maybe even a 600 plate appearance guy if it all clicks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a great call. Cheesecake, who's your pick?
I looked right at Rowdy. He's got a perfect launch angle and he's got an amazing max EV. He hits the ball hard. I think he's going to end up getting 25 to 30 home runs this year.
I thought you wasn't your late round gem Christian? Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong guy. You were on the same page. I hosted
Absolutely.
that and I didn't even realize that was the transition there. Marty, you were the one that was all about the Christian Walker love here.
Christian Walker. So he had a down year last year. He was injured. Okay. So the Bad X has him projected for 17 home runs, batting 254. Nothing sexy, nothing flashy, but I mean, he's considering he's free and he's going to be playing as much as possible. I like where he's at.
All right. And Doc?
Yeah, for me, it's Eric Hosmer. He has 4-year, $59 million left on that contract, so he's going to play. And he's a streaky guy. Look, began the season hitting 320 in the first month, 247, 172, back up to 355 in July. So playing in a good lineup, and hopefully he gets the opportunities because the Padres would be dumb to bench him paying him $20 million this year.
Yeah, it's one of the worst contracts in baseball, and at that point, you probably are going to play him, and there's always injuries too with that deep Padres roster. So I'm sure he'll get slotted in throughout the season, get a ton of at-bats for you. All right. We're done talking first baseman. Now what makes Triple Play Fantasy unique from other fantasy baseball podcasts. And that's starting off, of course, with our question of the week. And of course, that is sponsored by Monkey Knife Fight. Triple Play Fantasy is an official affiliate to Monkey Knife Fight, the fastest growing sports betting site in the United States. New depositors receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 using promo code TRIPLEPLAY. All right. Question of the week. Would you move the All-Star game from its current date? If so, to when and why? So, DVR, I'm curious to hear your answer. Do you like the All-Star game when it is, or do you think you would move it to a different part of the season?
I'd probably move it up a little bit earlier. I think there's two ways to think about it. I'd either have it right on the 4th of July because it's just such a slice of Americana, really, to think about the All-Star game being then. I think the downside of that is I think most people like going to a game. It's a holiday. Everyone's got the day off. If your local team is at home, you might actually go to the park that day. They draw a ton of fans pretty much everywhere on that day. So if you're pushing back because of that, you want baseball everywhere on the 4th of July, I would say the last 3 days of June would make a great break, because then you could have the first couple days of July off, and then July 4th could be the kickoff of the second half. So you'd have like a holiday to commemorate the second half of baseball season. So it'd be a little earlier. It'd be closer to when I think a lot of the minor league All-Star games end up being held. But I think it would also make a lot of sense to make that slight adjustment and split the season in half more evenly.
I like that too, because can you imagine if like every team had unique 4th of July uniforms or something? They could even make a marketing thing out of that. And everyone has like a red, white, and blue jersey, but like their logo, their team name is different. And that could be something that they do, like the white, red, white, and blue. I like where your head's at, Derek. I think that could be something pretty cool for sure. LC, this was your question. Did you have an answer that you feel like is the top answer here? And once again, he's a rookie and either is muted or his camera is bad. So we will go back to him and we'll go to Doc. Go ahead.
Yeah, so 4th of July was actually my idea, but I want to take it a step further. And I think the game should be played at the Field of Dreams every year. So the hardcore baseball fans fly out there. You know, it's kind of that nostalgia feel, 4th of July, celebrating America, America's pastime. And that way there's not really a bias of like, oh, you know, they're playing in a hitter or pitcher-friendly park. They're playing at a neutral field that's used once a year. Probably bad use of infrastructure, but it'd be cool.
Is that your answer, Cheesecake? You look very upset.
No, I'm not. I'm upset. I'm just, my computer's acting up tonight, and so it's giving me issues. My mute unmute game is off right now, and it's getting under. It's getting in my craw. But I'm sold on DVRs. I was gonna say the 4th. I do think that there's an argument to have it like after the season, kind of like the Pro Bowl. I think that might be some sort of a nice showcase. Like non-playoff team players can have like a all-star game after or something like that. But I do like my initial thought was the 4th of July, but I'm sold that you move it even further up, because I think you want to have the first and second half to be more even for sure.
Yeah, I do like the end of the season showcase thing though too. That gives kind of baseball fans something after the World Series is over, which is kind of cool. That's not a bad idea there. Marty, are you 4th of July, or did you go outside the box to something else?
Well, if we know Major League Baseball, we know that the 4th of July just makes way too much sense, right? And you talked about how great it would be, you know, easy it would be to market it. So they're not going to do that. So I'll tell you what they are going to do. And I think this is the best idea. I want to start the year off with the baseball game. January 1st, the All-Star game in a beautiful place, Florida, Arizona, California, wherever you want to have it. But finally, we have an opportunity. We don't have to watch some bowl game I don't care about. I don't have to watch basketball. Get to watch the All-Star game January 1st. Get a break from this winter. It's been snowing for 3 days here in Detroit. I need something.
There's so many things that will never happen. I mean, football's on there, bowl games. I mean, even sometimes Florida.
All of it's meaningless. I want an All-Star game.
Yeah, that's fair.
They have to play it in a dome.
But they can do it in Florida, Arizona.
Would pitchers be maxing out at like 88 though if they had the game in January?
Maybe. Yeah. Hey, their kids can fly down there. You know, make it a little family time, right? A couple mimosas. You know. Hey.
Oh man. Okay. Well, if that ever happens, I know who came up with that idea, because I don't think anybody else is suggesting that. So
the 4th of July makes way too much sense. They're going to do it in the middle of winter.
Okay. I like that. All right. Let's go to our last segment of the night. That's our game of the week. And Cheesecake is hosting the game this week. What are we playing?
I don't have a name for this game. It's just a question about statistics and how players compare for their statistics. We're going to answer in Price is Right style. The first to answer in the first question will be David, then Marty, then Eric, then DVR as the order of answer. And then the next question, Marty gets the first answer, and so on.
Oh, I love Art. He's the best game show host. He always explains it.
That was actually good for Art.
It was better for
me.
Okay.
All right. The first question is based upon average launch angle of a hitter. Now, there are 3 of these power hitters that are in one bunch, and one that is set apart and launch angle is much higher. I want you to tell me which one is set apart. All right. The 4 hitters are Mitch Haniger, Marcus Semien, Max Muncy, and Pete Alonso. 3 of them have a very similar launch angle, and one is much higher. David, which one is much higher?
I'm going to go out of the box and say Mitch Haniger.
Semien.
I thought it was Haniger too.
The answer is Marcus Semien, who is 20.3 launch angle. Haniger, Alonso, and Muncy are all between 14.7 and 15.2. So right now, Eric and Marty have 1 point, and DVR and David have 0. The next question is now, who has the lowest barrel rate out of these 4 pitchers from 2021? Who gave up the lowest barrel rate? The 4 pitchers are, Marty, you're the first answer, Zach Wheeler, Ranger Suarez, Alex Cobb, and Corbin Burns. Who had the lowest barrel rate against them?
Ranger Suarez.
This pains me to
Eric?
say, but Alex Cobb.
I'm gonna go
DVR.
Burns. It seems like too obvious, but I just think it's Burns.
And David?
There's part of me that's like, well, Derek's like the huge Brewers fan, so I feel like I should trust him. But I felt like that Burns gave up a lot of home runs, or I thought he gave up a lot of home runs last year, which means his barrel percentage might even be higher. I'm gonna go Ranger as well.
David and Marty, you found me out. Ranger Suarez is my heartthrob, and that's who had the lowest barrel rate out of those. Rangers 2.6. Corbin was a 3.1, so very low as well. Cobb and Wheeler 4.2 and 4.6. That's they both did very well. Now this third question is about their expected WOBA against, and 3 of them are bunched together, and one is set apart as much lower. Okay. Now, all 4 of these pitchers are liked by many in the industry, but one of them has a much better expected WOBA against from last season. The 4 pitchers are Adam Wainwright, Nathan Eovaldi, Lucas Giolito, and Alek Manoah. Who has the best expected WOBA against set apart?
So it was Wainwright, Giolito. Were the last 2?
Eovaldi and Manoah.
I'm gonna go Eovaldi.
I'm also gonna go with
DVR.
Eovaldi.
To me, it was either between Eovaldi or Wainwright, and my gut tells me Wainwright.
Eovaldi.
Marty. The correct answer is Alek Manoah, who had a 326 expected WOBA against, and Wainwright, Giolito, and Eovaldi were all between 354 and 357 against. So Manoah
we got to get DVR on the board here.
Yeah. Okay, so now you might need speed in your draft. Now, speed guys generally don't have a high barrel percentage, but there is one speed guy out of these 4 that has the highest, and the 4 guys are Trent Grisham, Whit Merrifield, Gene Segura, and Tommy Edman. Which one of these speed guys had the highest barrel percentage last season?
Oof, I'm gonna feel good about this. Probably taking a 0. I'm gonna go Tommy Edman.
David.
Edmund Segura, or the other 2?
Whit Merrifield and Trent Grisham.
I'll go Trent Grisham.
Segura.
Marty. And Eric.
I'm going Edmund, but that means I'll get it wrong because DVR said it.
Gene Segura had a 5.9 barrel percentage, higher than Grisham, higher than Edmonds 4.2, and Whit Merrifield 3.5 barrel percentage last season, the lowest out of all of them.
Jeez, Marty's smoking us.
Marty's up 3-1. I think we have only one more question left. I think it's a good one. You've clinched it, Marty, but this is a good one. 4 pitchers that I'm going to name have significant ERA to FIP differences. Their FIP is much worse than the ERA they produced in 2021. Which one of these 4 pitchers has the largest ERA to FIP difference? Is it Robbie Ray? Is it Walker Buehler? Is it Framber Valdez? Or is it Joe Musgrove? And David, you're starting.
I feel like the way you said Joe Musgrove gave it away. So I'm going to say Joe Musgrove.
I was thinking the same thing. Musgrove.
I feel like Robbie Ray is too easy of an answer. And do I want to cherry pick and say Joe Musgrove? What were the other two? Framber and
Walker Bueller.
I'll go Walker Bueller.
DVR?
Yeah, I kind of think Bueller could be a surprise here, but I'm not going Bueller. I'm going to go Fromber.
Fromber is the correct answer.
Hey, there we go.
Fromber had a 0.87 difference here, 3.14 ERA and a 4.01 FIP. Robbie Ray right behind him, 0.85 difference. The other two were both over 0.5 of a difference, though. So the winner is Marty. Second straight week. This is a winning streak, Marty.
Way to go, baby.
Wow. Yeah.
Call to come back.
Didn't you lose 3 straight months in a row? Now you've won.
It wasn't even him losing. He was coming in last place 3 months in a row.
Ancient history now.
It's all about pacing yourself, David. You know what I mean?
There you go. I like it. Well,
hey, what do we talk about? He's like Anthony Rizzo. He's very streaky.
there we go. I like it. All right. On that note, Derek, thanks so much for coming on the show tonight. Ton of fun for us to have you here, and we enjoyed talking first base with you.
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Please go ahead and plug all the great stuff you're doing. Again, unless you're living under a rock, you know what he does and he's doing. But in case there's some things that people may not know about, of course.
Sure, yeah. Rates and Barrels and the Athletic Fantasy Baseball podcast are the two shows I'm working on, in addition to a non-fantasy show, the Athletic Baseball show. That's just like being the last player picked on an all-star team for me. I mean, there's Jason Stark and Ken Rosenthal and Keith Law, and I'm just there. Like I just happen to be there. And Britt and I are doing a show on that feed now too. So just a lot of pods mostly. Sometimes I write. If I do a podcast, I tweet about it at Derek Van Riper.
Yeah, again, one of the nicest guys. You obviously know the voice, but he's a great follow, great mind, and a great overall person. So make sure you're following him and check out all the great work that he does over at The Athletic. And everybody that tunes into Triple Play Fantasy, whether you watch the YouTube or you listen to the podcast, we appreciate your support each and every week. Next week, we're going to be doing the second base position with another great guest, which I'm sure is going to be a fun episode. But until then, stay safe, happy drafting, and we're going to make like a bread truck. And we're going to haul these buns. Catch you guys next week.